Hello graduates, in just a few days you are going to be standing on stage with all of your friends and family in front of you, and we're giving you a couple of minutes to speak. To some of you, you're so excited. You've been planning this for years, but others of you might be a little nervous. So I'm going to share with you a few tips that I give my high school speech class for their graduation speech. You might only have 2 minutes, but it's amazing how with a little bit of organization in just 2 minutes, you can say some things that really matter. So I want to first break it down into 5 simple steps. So you'll have an attention getter of some sort, something that catches the attention of your audience. You will have 3 main things you'll want to say, and then you'll conclude nicely, usually by referencing your attention getter. So let me explain what I mean. First, your attention getter. This can be starting with a quote that inspired you, or you can start with a funny story from your family while you were homeschooling. You could start with a verse that means a lot to you. Maybe it's song lyrics or a poem, something that got you through high school. You start with some sort of a quote that tells us the flavor of what you're going to talk about. Then break it into 3 main sections that are maybe 20 seconds long each. And these sections can be divided into so many different ways. I'm going to give you just 4 different ways you can break these up. One is to identify 3 character qualities that you feel like you have learned through the years that you want to take with you later in life. Now, the beautiful thing about doing character qualities is that you can identify a character quality that's important and then thank somebody in your life who had that character quality. So if you mention hard work, you've learned the importance of hard work, then maybe you can talk about your dad who always exemplified hard work and you can thank him. So using character qualities is a nice way to have stories and specifics, tangible items attached to just a whole long list of thank yous. Another way you can break it into 3 is it's alliterative, but you can talk about your family, you can talk about your faith, and you can talk about your friends. So when you talk about your family, rather than just saying, I'm thankful for my family, they've been really helpful, you might specifically talk about the people, maybe the stories. Like, I love my family, I will never forget that long trip that we had, blah, blah, blah. I loved how we were silly together, and I think that our barbecues are the best. Thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, thanks, brother. And then you can talk about your friends. You know, those late night study sessions for chemistry, or being able to just kick back and play video games, whatever, kept you sane, something like that. You can talk about your friends and then maybe reference certain people. And then finally, you could talk about your faith. Like, my faith became real to me finally when I was in 10th grade, when I was at blank, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And so that's another one. You can talk about your family, friends, and faith. A third is you could talk about the realities of some of the hardest parts of homeschooling. Maybe your family went through something that was really hard. Maybe you really struggled with responsibility and you got really behind. Maybe you had friendship struggles or something like that. But then you can transition from what was really hard to the best part of homeschooling. But the best part of homeschooling, the part I would never trade for the world, was this. And then talk about that for a few seconds. And then finally, you can talk about the lessons that you've learned. So in the end, yes, there's been hard. Yes, there's been really good times, but I've learned, insert the great lessons that you've learned, and in the process, who you want to thank. So thank you to my grandparents for being there when things were hard. And I'm thankful for my parents that they were able to provide those great experiences for me, that sort of thing. And then the 4th one is you might want to break it into a before, during, and now after speech. So you can say, before high school, I thought that high school was going to be like, and then you talk about, what your preconceived notions were of high school. But during high school, I found that it was da 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 da, and I really needed to do this or that. So now here's some of my advice for people who are now entering high school. And then you can enter into a few moments of advice to the next class coming in. So before, during, and after. So to recap, maybe 3 character qualities, maybe your family, friends, and faith, maybe what was hard, what was good, and what lessons you learned, and maybe before high school, during high school, and then advice. These are just 4 ideas. You might be able to come up with something completely different, but I'm trying to break you out of just walking up there and saying, hi, I'm really glad I'm graduating. Yay, we made it. I'm thankful to this person, 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 and then ending. If you do that, that's fine. But this might be able to add just a little bit of variety to all the speeches we get to listen to. And then finally, you have a conclusion. So I always recommend in my speech class that your conclusion, it's great when it ties back into your attention getter. So I know it's only been 2 minutes, but we may have forgotten. So maybe if you started with a Dr. Seuss quote at the end, you finish the quote. Or maybe if you started with a funny story about how you never could understand fractions. At the end, you say, so now, even though I never will understand fractions, I still am thankful for the time that I spent doing blah, blah, blah. If you started like a song or lyrics, maybe you finish the lyrics at the end, or you finish out the poem, or you read the next verse in the passage. Something that kind of ties it up nicely, and then you can just say thank you, and then sit down. So now I have 3 notes for you of 3 things I would love to not see at high school graduation. 1, please do not waste our time. What? How are you gonna waste our time? Well, you'll waste our time if you get up there and you ramble on and on because you didn't prepare. Look, we have given you an opportunity to be able to share some things from your heart with your family and friends. So don't waste that. Don't waste that time. The speeches that ramble are the ones that don't prepare. And that leads me to my second point. I want you to respect the people that are in the audience. And that means if you worked on your speech the night before, or if you wrote it on stage, or if you just came up with it at the last second, don't tell us. Don't tell us. Don't let us know that. Let us feel like you value our time. Your family and your friends are all there. Just don't say it. Just walk up and give a speech. It's so much better to just approach it confidently than to walk up and make a whole bunch of excuses for yourself. And trust me, this is a skill that is going to take you so far in life. You don't want to walk into a business meeting. You don't want to walk into an interview. You don't want to walk into anything and start with excuses. So leave all those excuses behind. You can tell your friends before you get up there like, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. I just worked on this last night. But don't tell us. Just walk up and start speaking. And with that in mind, if it is easier for you just to stand up there, hold a piece of paper, and just read what you wrote, that's fine. We would rather hear your words just being read up there than have you be like super nervous if this is something you haven't done very much. And then my third tip for you is to pray over your speech. Spend some time with God. Ask him to help you be reflective over your time in high school, because believe it or not, it's gone, and you will look back on these years for the rest of your life in so many different ways. And so take some time to be reflective, take some time to pray over that. All right, I am going to now do a couple of sample speeches that hopefully will give you an example of how much you can really do with 2 minutes. Okay, the following 3 speeches are absolutely completely fiction. I am just giving them to give you some sort of an idea about what these speeches could look like. All right, here's the first one. Imagine 6 kids all standing on the top of the Indiana Dunes, big, huge mountains of sand, and we are racing to the edge of the cliff, but in the background, there's my mother, screaming at the top of her lungs, yelling at all of us, calling us all by name, yelling to get our attention, but we weren't paying any attention. See, I grew up in a very big family. There were lots of kids, and we all got homeschooled together, which created its own type of chaos. So, for example, we would have to share pencils and colored pencils and markers, and we often fought about whose was whose. We would be arguing with each other during read alouds when our mom would just be reading on the couch and we would be playing Legos while she read, and someone would necessarily have to be scooping the Legos way too loudly and we couldn't hear. Or there were the chores where we would be bickering and nobody could decide whose turn was it to empty the dishwasher. Well, if I emptied the dishwasher, do you have to do the dishes? It was crazy with our family, but it was also the best. And I just have to say thank you to all of my siblings. Thank you for all of the belly laughs. Thank you for all of the Nerf gun hits to my face. And thank you for all the memories. But I know we're not done, and we're gonna continue to make them. Second, I need to thank my friends. Soccer was my lifeline. You guys are the best. And we always will say, what happens in Charleston stays in Charleston. And then finally, for my faith, I am so thankful to Jesus. He's my everything. I'm so thankful that I was taught about him at a very young age. And as I'm growing, I just want to shine a light. I just want to be a light and let the whole world know how amazing he is. And so you're wondering, why was my mom screaming on the dunes? Well, my mom was screaming on the dunes because we'd all forgotten to put on our sunscreen. And so Mom, thank you for everything. Thank you for the good and the bad, but mostly just for making all this possible, because without you, I wouldn't be here. Okay, that was 2 minutes and 7 seconds. All right, this next one, I'm going to show what it looks like if I just read it. In 2005, when I was born, there were 850,000 homeschool students in the United States, but now there are 3.7 million. That's a lot of growth. Before I was homeschooled, I was very shy and I was closed off. I felt like there was all this pressure to perform. I struggled with reading and even math. I was just afraid all the time and really anxious. But since my homeschool, my parents pulled me out. They got me a few specific tutors. I want to thank Ms. Smith, who taught me my love for books. I want to thank Ms. Johnson, who drilled all those math facts until I got it right. And I want to thank my parents who sacrificed, and they took really big risks for me so that I could succeed. Since being homeschooled, school is still not very easy for me, but it's manageable. I now have a love of reading, especially everything that's a mystery, and I'm really excited to explore what God has for me next. Homeschooling may not be for everyone, but for me, I think it saved my life. Thank you. Oh, one more. Here it is. So when I was a little girl, I was sitting on the kitchen counter with my mom, and we were trying to work on fractions, and I was crying. I was bawling my eyes out because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't know when to cross multiply, when to add across, how it worked. It didn't make any sense to my mind. But through experiences like that, I've learned 3 valuable character traits, and one is perseverance. So when it comes to math, I learned to work really hard and persevere. My parents got me a math tutor. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I really appreciate all the time you put into me. And also to my mom for researching all the curriculum to find out what would be best for my own learning style. And I actually ended up really loving math. So that was a huge win. The second character quality would be hard work. So my dad, when my mom decided to stay home with me, he worked an extra job most of the time so that we could have enough money with my mom not working. And then sometimes when he would go on his second job, he would take me with and show me around and teach me some of the skills and some of the things that he was doing. And I learned so much, and I love that time with him. So Dad, thank you. Thank you for teaching me about hard work, and thank you for having a good attitude in the process. And then the third character quality is joy. And this comes from my twin little brothers. While I may not have always been the best big sister to you, I would often be super stressed or high strung. You would do super goofy things like putting your underwear on your head and running around the room singing as loud as you can, and it just made me laugh. Or by running in and shooting me with Nerf bullets, or begging me to come outside and play games with you. Thank you. You taught me what joy is and how I can have joy even in hard work. So all in all, I am now going to go into some sort of a math career, still a little undetermined, but I've learned that with perseverance, hard work, and joy, it is going to be an adventure worth having. Thank you.